you guys are both colonels, and I'm sure you have a whole bunch of stories about officers that should have been promoted but never were.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh
Because,
yeah.
the military, like back during World War II, Korea, and I dare say part of Vietnam, if you were a shit hot commander, you pretty much would go from one command to another command to another command. They'd give you a break here and there. And that was like your main job was to command because you were good at it. And then if you were not good at command, you were a staff weenie. Now it's reversed. Now you get people who suck at command. They put them up at the top. They're completely incompetent. They move up the ranks. All of the good leaders that I've seen wind up rotting in staff hell from first lieutenant all the way up to major and maybe even lieutenant colonel if they can't pick up a battalion command.
Yeah, that's
Is
true.
that about accurate?
No, that's
Yes.
true. The suck part's a little bit different. It's not using teeth on the upslide and failing upward is how you get promoted now. Um, and the hard part in it is that like I had a major that worked for me that I tried for 2 years to get him promoted. He'd done command and staff college. He was ready to go to war college. He had, master's degree. The guy was a fantastic leader. And because of the 2-star that was in charge of our brigade, she would not allow anybody that wasn't gay or openly liberal to get promoted. I was surprised I got promoted. And it's interesting that um, I think I was rewarded for my technical expertise more than leadership. It was the lesser of two evils for them, right? Because
Yep.
at the time we were dealing with a lot of attacks across our infrastructure, that they were taking all kinds of secrets. So I think the command was more worried about blocking the attacks at the time than promoting people that were actually legitimately good leaders. So again, the tech bubble kind of helped in that situation. But I had a friend that was armor officer. He's one of the best armor officers I have ever worked with. This guy, brilliant tactician, could not get promoted past major, and he had done all the gates. And the way they used to do it back in the old days, the way they used to do it, and when Strategic Air Command was still around, and all the lieutenants would matriculate from their initial training, they had a board at Stratcom where all the lieutenants were listed. You were ranked. But from the moment you stepped on active duty, you were ranked. And if you were a fast burner, you had your career path already mapped out and which general officer you're going to follow. And I went to Stratcom, I think it was like year 3 or year 4, and I saw my name on the board. And I was like, looked at the general officer I was going to report to, and I'm like, fuck that, I'm out of here. There's no way I'm following that guy anywhere. And, I'm lucky, right? Most guys don't get that. In fact, the Space Force commander, Chance Salzman, I served with him at Malmsford. He was he was second lieutenant with me, and great guy. But I watched what he would have to go through to get to where he's at now, and there was no way I was doing that. Because look, I went to Quantico and spent a year with the Marines in '93, and I met some of the best officers I've ever served with in that place, and almost to the person on the Marine Corps side. Almost all of them retired as lieutenant colonels or as 06s. None of them made general officer. And it's because they didn't go to amphibious warfare school. And when you look at all the gates you have to go through and all the different levels of bullshit that you have to endure to get to be a general officer, you realize very quickly that what career path you want to stay on. Like I never wanted to be a general officer because I spent enough time at the Pentagon and watched how those guys operated and watched all the bullshit. And most of them, let's face it, most of them are socialists.
So
Not all of them, but
hang on, sir. Sir. So you're
go ahead.
saying that you still have your tonsils intact and you weren't a master at the mouth hug with a head bob with no
I
teeth?
was not. I was not.
I like
I
it.
did. I did not. Yeah,
And
I
here's
was not a
another
pull
question.
How
string.
the hell are most of our generals socialists?
You would
Yeah.
be very surprised. So when you go to, and I was getting to it. By the way, that was a good segue, Tom. Um, most of the general officers go to war college, and some of them go to industrial war college, and some of them go to become fellows, right? So you get a fellowship, you go to Harvard, you go do asymmetric warfare, you do counterinsurgency, whatever your fellowship is. When you get there, it's 2 years of indoctrination, and most of the academic institutions are predominantly liberal anyway. Like I did a lot of work at Naval Postgraduate School doing cyber exercises while I was in command. And I was astonished at how many senior Navy officers were flaming liberals. And this was back in 2011, 2012. This is not today. They were liberal all the way back then. You could go all the way back to pre-World War II, and a predominant number of the general officers were all liberals and socialists. So
Wow.
this is not a new phenomenon. What's the checks and balances were at the time was we had a strong conservative element that was in the Senate and the House and the legislative, as well as in the lobbyist groups. So that kept a lot of them in check. But now, with so much Chinese influence in Washington, D.C., and so much Chinese influence across all the defense contractors, that's why you're seeing this open move towards communism. That's where all this is coming from. This is a bigger agenda than just decimating the military. This is literally, they're trying to indoctrinate our entire population to accept communism. That's where this is going.
And Steve, I never.
What?
I never understood what Steve meant until our conversation yesterday. I realized that too at the Pentagon, how many of these guys were complete commies. I thought it was, I had a general come in my office in 2021, and one-on-one, he said, I'm not getting promoted because I donated to a Republican campaign. And he knew where I stood on these issues at the time. I was pretty open about it. And he was trusting me to tell me that. And also from our conversation with Steve yesterday, I had a general who I worked with in a very sensitive place in the basement of the Pentagon, and very nice guy, but I was being tested. I was being asked questions. Who do I support? In friendly conversation. And then I was warned by a fellow worker and said, hey, this guy's a complete commie. I'm like, I thought he was kidding the whole time.
Wow.
But he wasn't. Yeah.
You were
and
being interrogated.
I was being basically interrogated.
Here's a question. Both of you did what, 20 plus years as officers?
Yep.
Yeah.
How many of those years did you actually command troops?
Probably 7.
Okay. What about you?
No, nowhere near as many. 3, 4. I was company commander in the Guard, and then company commander in Iraq, 2009, 2010.
All right.
So 3 years, 4 years.
I talk to a lot of young guys that I want to be an officer because I want to lead troops. You get 0 time. Out of a 22 career, you're going to command troops, if you're lucky, 4 years. The rest of the time, you're going to be wearing knee pads, juggling, beach balls while massaging a shaft, working on staff.
Yeah. And as a battalion commander, I spent 4 years as a battalion commander, and I can tell you that that's unheard of now. But part of it was most of my counterparts that could have taken command were deployed. Mm-hmm. So I was caught in that gray zone where everybody had been deployed once and people were doing their second, third rotations, and there wasn't anybody else to backfill me. But after 2008, when Obama came in, the entire command structure changed. Like the guy that replaced me, when I retired, I went back a year later because one of my majors wanted me to come back and talk to the troops and talk about, cyber warfare and what was going on. And I met this guy and I'm like, dude, where is your dick? You are a fucking cuck. Grow a dick, get your fucking man card back. And his battalion was being run by a female NCO, which isn't a bad thing if she's not, if she's at least got some finesse about it. Because look, how many times, Top, did you step in for the BC and take over take the formations and take the troops and get things going when the BC's wrapped up with, the administrative stuff or some kind of legal action? Pick your flavor, right? How many times did I have to go bail somebody out for a DUI or, fights or whatever the case may be? But
I did that all the time.
Yeah, that's my point, right?
Yeah,
so
I did it a bunch of times.
You finessed it so it didn't look like the old man was off fucking around. This NCO literally made it look like she was in charge. And I'm like, you're the fucking battalion commander. When I handed this off, you had missions with NSA, with the 3-letter agencies. You were supporting PACOM. You had fucking joint billets at PACOM. What the fuck are you doing? You have technical experts here. Why are you sitting here letting this NCO talk about fucking marching with a tech battalion? What the fuck? Sorry.
That's all right.
On
That's all
point.
right.
Yeah, look at that.
You
See
go
what I
out in
mean?
the weeds. I
But
like
it
it. I like it.
started then, and it was pervasive then, and they were slowly moving everybody that was a strong leader out of leadership positions into these positions
Well,
that were more staff oriented. Like, Tom, I know you went through this, and that subtle interview you went through. This is how it works for black programs. When you're in a black program, or they're trying to court you to go into a black program, you have to have a skill set that they need. And
Yep.
so they'll take you to lunch and they'll start asking you questions about your background. you know what have you done? What do you want to do? Do you need notoriety? Do you need to tell people what you're doing? It's very subtle, right? But when they're doing these kind of interviews, like the counterintelligence stuff, which is basically what you went through as a CI polygraph that your commander put you through to see, are you loyal to the left? Are you a believer in communism? That's what that whole program was. They started that shit just after January 6th. They used January 6th to justify it. But remember the vetting the FBI did? The whole part of that process was to identify anybody that was a threat that was going to push back on the vaccine mandates so they could push them out of the service. You were already marked to get out of the service before they even
I know.
signed the paperwork.
And that's what I'm trying to tell people that are questioning why they're being kicked out for no reason at this point. I tell them, you were targeted 2 years ago, 3 years ago for some of you.
They had a reason, they just didn't tell you.
Didn't tell you.
Show any intestinal fortitude nowadays, you're gone, because that you're not subject to being indoctrinated.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, but it went beyond that. So I was privy to some meetings at my last duty station here at Army Reserve Command. Nobody knew we were listening in on this stuff, because here's what happened with these high-level command staffs. The general officers, the commanders, did not trust their staffs. So they held meetings without their primary staff. They didn't trust them with lower ranking people, and they kept these meetings secret. Yep.
What the
And
what?
I'll tell you, yeah, they did. Yep.
That's
And
fucked.
one of these meetings, it was a general here at Army Reserve Command. This had to do with the COVID. And he asked a question after they looked at all the names on the list of people that did not get vaccinated. He goes, how does this affect diversity? That was his only concern. And he couldn't ask that if he had a real staff meeting. I mean, these people were, once he trusted, so the leaders of some of these staffs were not invited. I know those leaders. They ended up getting booted. They're booted out now. So they went beneath the staff, the primary staff, to lower elements. We're talking like majors, right? And primary staff's usually a general or a colonel.
Mm-hmm.
And they had meetings with, basically, that's not how the military works.
No, you cannot have secret goddamn meetings with the higher ups without involving their staff. I mean,
Right.
that's the way the military works. You need to know what your commander's intent is, and if he never tells you, then I mean,
This is how they're getting away with the stuff that Colonel Murray here is talking about. This is how they're dragging communism in, is they keep the staffs out of it. Now all these higher level people are making all of these decisions and bringing in DEI and communism and diversity and all this stuff, like the colonel was talking about. And the staffs then just have to eat it after the meetings. That's what I'm seeing.
And think about it this way, right? So this is at the very top. This is being driven down, right?
Yeah.
And I've crossed paths with Lloyd Austin several times. And first of all, the guy's a fucking miserable human being in person. He's even worse when you have to sit and listen to him pontificate about whatever the fuck he's passionate about. But he was put in place for a very specific reason, and that reason is to decimate the military in total. Obama tried to do it from 2008 to 2016, and he was highly successful. Look at how many general officers he replaced in the first few months of his presidency. He went through like 40 general officers. But it's not just the general officers. You have the senior executive services that run all of the agencies like DISA and I can't think of a DefSchmeck, deaf schmeck and the doodads. Anyway, but you've got all these agencies that have SESs now, including the VA, and the VA has gone through a transformation too, right?
Yeah.
People think that when Trump came in, he fixed all this stuff. He didn't, because all of those Obama appointees were still in DC.
So,
And the first thing they did as soon as Trump left is they got rid of anybody that was loyal to Trump. And then they started targeting, using the FBI
Uh-huh.
and using key leaders throughout the military. They started targeting anybody that was loyal to the Constitution. So now they're trying to consolidate power. But this is where they're going to fail. They're going to fail at the place where they have to execute, because they just set perfect conditions for a perfect storm in both the Middle East and in Ukraine. And if they push forward in Ukraine and do this whole stupid idea of attacking Russia directly, this is going to turn to shit really quickly, because we don't have the logistics. We don't have the log trains. We don't even have the manufacturing apparatus to replace one fucking bullet on the battlefield that we expend. And we've sent all of our strategic stockpile. So we maybe have 2 weeks. Do you think any of these fucking snowflakes they've put in the military in the past 2 years are going to pick up a rifle? Most of them are going to panic and drop their weapon the first fucking gun, first round that snaps over their head. So they've created the perfect storm.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Popp for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.